Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Consumer Protection Symposium session on financial fraud and advisor misconduct. I'm Kristie Gibson. I'm an assistant clinical professor here at the School of Law, and I teach in the Business Law Clinic. And the way that today's presentation is structured, I will do brief introductions of both of our panelists, and then we'll move on to questions that I have prepared for our panelists, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So we are very delighted to have two esteemed colleagues with us here today, Professor Wu and Yuan. They're going to be discussing their work related to financial advisors and financial advisory misconduct. Professor Wu is an associate professor of finance and the John B. Rogers Research Scholar at the University of Oregon Lundquist College of Business. His areas of expertise include institutional investors such as hedge funds and private equity, as well as corporate finance and microfinance. Professor Wu's research has been published in several leading journals, such as the Journal of Finance and Review of Finance. He received his doctoral degree in finance from the University of Vienna and his master's and bachelor's in economics from Peking University. Prior to joining the faculty at the University of Oregon, he was a faculty member at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the University of Vienna, and Peking University. Professor Wu will be discussing his research in the financial advisory area, which has culminated in part in the presenter's co-authored paper, Private Equity and Financial Advisory Misconduct, that Professor Wu will talk about today. Ms. Yuan is a fourth-year PhD student, a candidate in the Department of Finance in the Lundquist College of Business. Her areas of research include venture capital, financial intermediation, the financial advisory industry, and household finance. She's presented her research on these topics at a number of premier finance conferences. Ms. Yuan is working on her thesis, Diminishing Brokers, Why Brokers Are Taking on Fiduciary Duties and What It Means for Investors. This work discusses dual-registered financial advisors and how advisory duties may influence an advisor's professional conduct. Welcome to you both. As an overview, and as we have been discussing, financial fraud and financial misconduct are exceptionally broad topics, which can surface in a number of industries and in a number of different types of transactions. And as we know, financial misconduct in industries that have consumer-facing components can have a significant impact on the lives and the livelihoods of directly impacted consumers. Today, our focus on the financial advisory industry. It's an industry that, as you know, provides services to sophisticated investors, as well as those who may not have prior experience in investing. Investors with no or with limited experience in investing often place their trust in the financial advisor to make decisions that align with the investor's goals. One of the U.S. regulatory bodies that operates in this area, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, announced it filed 760 enforcement actions across a spectrum of industries and recovered $6.4 billion on behalf of public investors in fiscal year 2022. This is a 9% increase over 2021. Narrowing the focus to the financial advisory industry, during the first 6 months of 2023, the SEC has focused enforcement efforts on inadequate disclosure, failure to disclose conflicts of interest, undisclosed advisor or other fees, and breach of fiduciary duty. So you can get a sense of the SEC charges and the facts that are the basis of the administrative proceedings on the SEC's website. Just recently, on September 22nd, 2023, the SEC charged a private equity fund advisor in California with, among other charges, breach of its fiduciary duty for failing to act in his client's best interest. With this in mind, Professor Wu, I'd like to turn to you, if I could, to ask the first question. Can you provide some background about the financial advisory industry to frame our conversation today? Perhaps to start, we can explore what the financial industry does, who are the clients in the financial advisory industry, how many people work in this field, what are some of the well-known advisory firms, and how big is the financial advisory industry in terms of assets under management? Professor Wu.
Thank you very much, Kristie, for the great introduction. It's my great pleasure to be here. So, in response to your first question, let me use some slides to show, because there's a lot of information about this industry. I know this audience probably know very well the difference between financial fraud and financial misconduct, but you may not be fully aware of this financial advisory industry. So let me provide some background information. So So financial advisory industry is actually one of the major industry in asset management. As at the end of 2022, there are more than 15,000 SEC registered financial advisory firms. They're hiring nearly like 1 million employees, and the total amount of assets they are managing exceeds $100 trillion. These numbers are gigantic, right? It's hard to believe. But think about multiple layers of delegation. For example, your retirement money may be managed by Fidelity, and Fidelity may select another fund. So there are multiple layers of delegation and advisory involved. So that's why you have a lot of double counting. So even though US GDP is around $23 trillion, this total amount of advisory asset is actually like 5 times or more than 4 times the big. Now, if you think about the size of the industry, there are some additional measures. For example, the number of clients they serve exceed like 60 million numbers, right? And most of these investment advisory firms, they will provide asset management for individuals. So like not just big clients, but also individual households, retirees. So this is very much related to the well-being of basically US household. You can see from here, the very large chunk is retail individuals. If you think about it, no matter you're rich or you're poor, you always need to make financial decisions. So especially now with the defined contribution system, everybody needs to decide how to invest their retirement money, right? And you can see also this group in the last 5 years has the highest annual growth rate. So retail client is actually a very important part of this industry. And now if you think about what they do, or for most of these advisory firms will provide some financial portfolio management, but they will also basically do pension consulting, financial planning, and all these things. A lot of them actually specialize to help you select the asset managers. So which fund you should invest into, that basically is like a selection of asset manager. You may find this overwhelming, so then you can consult some financial advisors. What are the big names out there? One guy is by far the biggest, then followed by Fidelity, PIMCO, and a lot of these household names. Then if you think about the typical firm profile, in fact, there are very big ones, but a lot of them are pretty small. Like 92% of them has 100 or fewer employees, and 70% of them have less than $1 billion as under management. And a typical one would have just 9 employees with 2 offices. And then this is actually like Hannah actually go through this data and do some classification. We find this industry in terms of professionals, they are mainly white males. There are some other minority groups, but it's not very significant yet. Now think about Oregon. Actually, this is also highly relevant for Oregon because there are 151 financial advisory firms registered with SEC, but with principal office in Oregon. But if you think about the firms that are licensed to do business in Oregon, they're actually over 2,000. And then these are called investment advisors, but they're also FINRA registered brokers. There is like 181,000 individual employees. So we see this is also quite relevant for Oregon as well. So I hope this is like a brief introduction will provide some thought about at least some recognition of the importance of this industry.
Thank you, Professor.
Sure, thanks.
So this one, now that we have a sense of what the financial industry looks like, can you share a little bit about what the main types of financial advisor misconduct are and what each type of misconduct might look like? And then if you could talk a little bit about how common financial misconduct is in the industry. And then I'm also interested in hearing about some of the misconduct cases that you've discovered as you were doing your research.
Okay, thank you, Kristie. So basically, Professor Wu said this is a very important industry, but unfortunately, I have to say this industry does not have the best reputation. So you may heard of some scandals, and for example, like the notorious like the Madoff pound scheme. And misconduct in this industry actually is quite common. It is confirmed by some other papers as well as our paper. So here I have a number. So it is from a paper in 2019. They find that 7% of the financial advisor individuals, they have been involved in misconduct throughout their career. So you may feel like 7% is not that high, but if you like, in another way to think about it, basically 1 out of 10 financial advisors, they have committed misconduct in their career. So because the misconduct is very common in this industry, so actually it is a highly regulated industry. So SEC have pushed very hard to make all the information as transparent as possible, which also they provided a lot of data on the website, which make our project possible. So in our project here, the misconduct is more specific. So we include like 5 types of misconduct in as like a broad definition of misconduct here. So actually, like in all the financial advisors, they have a report on the website, and you basically have a history of their misconduct in the past. So there are 9 types of there, but these 5, they are more profession related, so that's why they are included in the broad definition of misconduct here. So let's start from the customer dispute here. This is like the most common one, and I could say like this is like the least severe one in these 5 types. So basically, this is a type of disclosure event involved a consumer-initiated investment-related arbitration or civil suit. And sometimes this kind of misconduct could be like minor, and the financial advisor and the client like they settle on some solution, and then it's like let it go. But sometimes it could be very severe. They will go to a civil court or even like a criminal event. So it depends on the severity of the event, and it could be a very minor, like just a customer dispute, or a civil event or a criminal event. So another one is we call the regulatory event. So if like the advisor violates some FINRA or SEC rules or policies, they will get some sanctions or like the punishment from the regulatories. So this is what we call it's a regulatory event. And the last one is we call the misconduct-related termination. So if this advisor is fired by the company or resigned from the company because of like involving some like misconduct or some violation of the policy of the company have to report it to SEC, and it's also listed there on this financial advisor's report. So this is what we call it's the termination. And here I have a table which like listed the incidence of this all the types of misconduct. So as I said before, the customer dispute or the customer initiated complaint, this is definitely the most common one, so which is 10.9, even higher than our estimation. And there is the fire for bankruptcy. This is more the personal financial like condition. It's also listed over there. We can like think about if a person is in financial, if a financial advisor is in financial distress, he or she may be more likely to commit a misconduct. So that's why it's also listed there, but it's not in our misconduct definition. And also like the criminal, employment terminate, and the regulatory actions. So then I want to give a typical case of the financial advisor misconduct and how it is listed on SEC's website. So this man is called Joseph Whitney. This is all the public information, so you can find it on website. So he's a financial advisor at UBS Financial Services. And actually, he received a complaint saying that the client attorney alleges that this advisor breaches the fiduciary duty by that the financial advisor in asking him to invest in a project with his wife. And of course, the financial advisor will deny this kind of complaining, but because of this, actually, this financial advisor received a regulatory event, so he's not registered anymore because it's a very controversial event here. So this case is not settled yet, but like it's already ended as a regulatory event. So sometimes the misconduct could be really extreme, and I'm really shocked to see this kind of like a misconduct. So there is a broker in Florida, and actually he's barred from, FINRA barred him because he is charged with murder 22 months ago. And actually he killed one of his clients to collect his like 2 million life insurance policy. So this is a very dramatic case, but sometimes like when people are in financial distress, they could do really extreme like a misconduct. Okay, that's like a broad overview of the misconduct in this industry.
Excellent, thank you both. I'd like to pose the next series of questions to both of you as it relates to both of your research. So I'm wondering what motivated you to explore this area? And then as a follow-up, what are your main findings from your research? And is there anything about what you discovered in your research that really surprised you?
Yeah, let me talk about this. This is related to our paper, joint paper with Hannah and another colleague, a former colleague who is now at SEC. Go literally after bad behaviors. So this paper is focused on private equity impact on financial advisors' misconduct. So what motivated us into this project was literally, I see so many news on websites saying that, oh, private equity firm is taking over another financial advisory firm, and then, yeah, this kind of story you can hear all over the place. Wells Fargo sell the asset management arm to private equity, and the other ones take over private equity. So you see all these deals happening very frequently. And I didn't have much expertise with private equity. Actually, my colleague, Abu Shin, he's a real expert on private equity. So I just asked him, so is there any study about this phenomenon and the potential impact? He said, well, not that I'm aware of. And I said, well, then we just then collect the data and try to look into that. And that's basically how it started. But also, more broadly, you could also see, well, this kind of misconduct could have very strong implications for people's saving behavior, for people's participation in the financial market. If you don't trust, say, if you don't trust the advisor who is advising you, you may say, okay, maybe I should just stay away from the financial market, just put my money with the bank, the checking account, not anything. Right? This is actually a problem. We want to encourage people to participate in the financial market, but for many people, they need a handle, they need an intermediary. And if this intermediary is doing a lot of bad things, that's going to hurt the entire financial system. And you already see that it's such a big system, right? So that's why we think it's a very important issue, has a lot of wealth of consequence. But if you think about what are the potential impact of private equity in this industry, ex ante is not that clear, right? Private equity firm can be bad, can be good. Only the data can tell us, because theoretically they could care a lot about reputation. They have a lot of experience in improving efficiency, like a lot of previous studies have found. Maybe they will manage their employees more effectively and then reduce the financial misconduct, have more effective internal control or whatever, right? So ex ante is all unclear. So that's why we dig into the data. So luckily, as Hannah mentioned, there are a lot of data sources that allow us to do this project. So very specifically, we just want to see how does the misconduct rate changes when the financial advisor firm is taken over by private equity. That's our research project. So in terms of the data, first we need to get all the individual advisors, like misconduct record. And this is possible if you go to the SEC website. Can I just open it? Just to show you how this, it's now showing up on this size. So anyway, so if you just go to, maybe I can pull this over. Okay, yeah. That's fine. Yeah, let's just yeah. Open it. So just, because I want to show this because it's a very rich resources. Oh, it's still not moving to, yeah, now it's
There, yeah, just drag it over.
Yeah, so my fingers are You see, that's why you need co-authors. Yeah. So this website is very rich information, right? You have just type in the name of the firm or name of the individual. If you have the CRD, or like what Hannah did is that you just download entire database using the web scraping. So we basically get the current version of the paper. We have data for more than 500,000 individuals. And now we're expanding, in the process of expanding the data to include also another website called Broker Check. There we add another like 1.5 million individuals. So we want to have their record so that we have a complete database. Now, let me go back to, so I mentioned this because this could be something that not everybody is aware of. So next time when you want to hire a financial advisor, you better just go to this website to check his record, whether he has done anything bad in the past. So that's basically what we have. So from this website, you get basically millions of the PDF files, and Hannah was very experienced in extracting all this information from some very opaque, like legal terms. We have a lot of time struggle trying to understand and process that and make that into something that's machine. That's basically programmable. And then we collect the firm level data from SEC ADV form. Okay, so this is that all advisory firms who are registered with SEC, they would need to file an annual report about their business. And then, obviously, we need the private equity data. And that's where we get our private equity deals from PitchBook. So this one is probably the most comprehensive collection of all the private equity deals. So we just basically combine these three data sources and then do our analysis. In terms of methodology, we use so-called stacked diff and diff analysis. Essentially, we just compare the buyout firms with a control group of firms and see what's the difference between and after one group relative to another. So this is stacked diff and diff. And now here is just a plot of the number of deals that has happened. You can see private equity definitely become more and more interested in this industry. So there you see a lot of deals collected from our data source. Now, one of the first thing we looked at is that what drives the decision to take over a private equity, to take over a financial advisory firm. Do the private equity firms want to target the firms that are relatively clean, or they want to basically target firms that are already like very aggressive in their business practice? So here is actually, one thing we find is that in general, this misconduct record, this is D bar, all these things are just like the average misconduct rate or average number of misconduct on an annual basis. Obviously, this is a small number, luckily. But you can see they are all statistically significant, meaning that if you have more misconduct in your history, in your book, you are less likely to be taken over by private equity. So that's basically saying that private equity, they want to have a clean record. They want to have a clean firm to begin with. If the firm has already had a lot of misconduct, they are actually going to basically stay away from it. And that's kind of understandable, because if you want to take over the firm, right, the firms need to do some due diligence. If the firm has a lot of misconduct in the past, it's unlikely to be of interest to private equity, because private equity don't want to they're not just coming to screw things out, right? So we want to have a good, solid base to begin with. But what's interesting is that now if you match the firms that are taken over relative with the firms that are not taken over, you can see after the takeover, the misconduct rate actually significantly go up. So that in terms of the rate, they start with somewhere below industry average, but then they more than double to a level that's basically on par with the industry average. So that is, I mean, you say before on an annual basis, misconduct rate is 0.189%. This is on an annual basis, and then this effect is 0.277. That's like more than double the misconduct rate. So that's basically the main baseline result. And then if you look, the number of counts actually also double, right? It's basically the effect is basically unconditionally is like 0.2 base point, and then after you go all the way up to 0.04 plus 0.02. So that's like an increase of 200% in terms of average number of misconduct. So that's a pretty big effect. Now, obviously, we try to understand what's going on, what drives these effects. So we do a lot of like subsample analysis to say compare the firms that grow fast relative the one grow relatively slow after misconduct in terms of per advisor asset under management. We find the effect is stronger if the asset per capita, like per advisor asset under management, grows faster. So that may indicate that maybe these firms are pursuing more aggressive strategies, and in this process they commit more misconduct. And we also find this effect actually concentrate in firms that actually serve retail investors, individual investors. So there are some advisory firms who only serve institutional investors. Among those firms, we actually don't find this effect. So we sort of indicate that maybe this private equity firm or whatever, they are trying to exploit naive needs of the clients. So that's one thing we could probably just infer from this evidence. And we also compare the ones that are more focused than the ones that take over everything, from grocery store to drugstores. There are some private equity firms, they just do everything, right? We actually find that those firms actually have more problems. Those private equity firms, their total have more problems. For the private equity firms that are very concentrated in just take over the financial advisory firm or financial industry in general, this effect is much weaker. And then also, there are some of these private equity firms, basically these deals also happen simultaneously with the management buyout. So basically, the management buyout is backed by private equity, so that means that the previous management team is still staying and managing the fund. And I always find in those deals, we actually don't find an increase in misconduct. So sort of the last set of results sort of indicate that if the private equity firm is more experienced in this industry, have more expertise in this industry, or the management teams have more expertise, then this is less likely to happen. So maybe a lot of this mistake is basically just a brand new private equity firm coming into this space, not fully aware of everything, right, or knowing all the legal restrictions, and they may lead to some misconduct. So we also look at whether this increase in misconduct is due to the changes in the employee base, because the private equity firm can hire new employees. These new employees may behave differently from previous employees. We actually find this is not the case, because even if we focus on the same individuals before and after, basically we have thrown in like individual fixed effect. The effect is still largely there, it's not changing much. So that sort of indicates that the increase in misconduct is more due to the change of the behavior of the existing employees than the problems brought in by the new employees. So this is basically a brief summary of our project. Luckily, and also we are very thankfully got supported by the grant, consumer protection grant. We are very grateful for that. And just to summarize, we say, well, private equity firm, they are more interested in advisory firms that have very clean record. But then after they take over, the misconduct actually goes up, and this increase is we sort of tied to say the asset growth rate and the focus versus non-focused acquirers, and also whether it's retail oriented service providers or it's just institutional oriented service providers. So the general takeaway may be that because of the aggressive pursuit of profit, or maybe because of the lack of expertise, this transition actually leads to an increase in the misconduct. We thought that's kind of something we should probably pay attention to, especially like regulators want to. Yeah.
This is very troubling. I mean, so I'm curious if it suggests a story where when private equity buys these companies, it's leading the people who are already there to make more unethical decisions. Maybe because private equity comes in and says like, "Oh, we need more growth, cut corners here, whatever, more profits." Like, what's your sense of like, do you think this is happening in other industries as well when private equity buys them out and causes employees to make more unethical decisions to customers, or cause the business to exploit customers in various ways? Like, do you think that extends to that context? Is there other research on private equity in these other contexts and how they behave?
Actually, thank you very much for the question. There's actually a very fast-growing literature on the so-called stakeholder impact of private equity ownership. The evidence is kind of mixed. I can't say just one side or the other dominant. Sort of the general takeaway is that if the target firm is in an industry that's quite opaque, for example, medical industry, nursing home, hospital, or higher education, in those spaces, it seems that private equity tend to cause more problems, like financial advisory firms, because the quality of the product is hard to verify, regulation is weak, and then the private equity firm, they are very good at testing the limit of the law or whatever. So they pursue the business profit more aggressively. But I have also another paper which look at the carbon emission impact of private equity ownership. There, we look at the power plant data. And one feature of the power plant data is very closely monitored. Like this emission is measured like generator by generator on an hourly basis. So it's very tightly regulated. In that space, consistent with some other findings in other industries, that in a highly regulated environment and also very competitive environment, actually private equity ownership tend to have a more positive effect. And that's also what we find. We find actually after they take over those power plants, they actually increase the efficiency in electricity generation. They use less fuel to produce the same amount of electricity. And therefore, if you measure the emission intensity in terms of the emission over output, it actually decreased by about 5%. So that's a significant improvement. So that, in some sense, is that it basically says that law matters, but regulation matters, right? If you're in a different regulation environment, the private equity can do very different things. Yeah. Thank you. That's an excellent question.
So if I can ask another question too. So what are the implications for consumers, like individual investors, and even for regulators, if private equity acquisitions do have an effect on the financial advisor performance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think probably one thing is like during this transition period, maybe there are a lot more bad things tend to happen. I think in terms of regulators, probably you want to take a closer look. For example, some of the Oregon financial advisory firms were also taken over by private equity. So maybe then the regulator maybe want to take a closer look in those cases to see whether there's some bad things happening. Maybe intentionally because of pursuit of profit, or maybe just unintentionally because there's a new guy coming in because of barbarians at door, right? They are not familiar with this industry and then tend to do things unintentionally, do wrong things unintentionally. That's something I think we should keep in mind from the regulator's perspective. Also from the individual's perspective, I think we saw these very rich resources. I think you should do your own due diligence to check the background of your advisors, and especially if this advisor, the firm this advisor worked with, is undergoing some ownership transition or restructuring, and then you may pay additional attention. So that's maybe one thing people could keep in mind.
So we have around 9 minutes left. I just want to open up for questions from our audience.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the period where you're seeing a bump of misconduct, is it like a transition period where it's first when they take over and that's when you're seeing more misconduct, or is it like throughout the lifetime of the private equity ownership?
That's a very interesting question. Because in general, the private equity firms will take over a firm and then operate for, on average, 3 to 5 years. and then sell to another buyer. So there is some kind of short-termism built in this business model. It would be great to see if they tend to hold longer, but we don't have enough data to have a fund that owned by privately very long. So yeah, so that's why we have an event window like 5 years before the takeover, 5 years after the takeover.
I have another question too about when private equity companies come in and they take over a firm, and let's say that the firm is very clean at the outset, as you were discussing earlier, and then they're creating efficiencies, but yet we're seeing some of the potential financial advisor misconduct, and then they go to sell. Are you seeing then the misconduct really at the baseline of the industry in general, or are you seeing an increase, and are buyers willing to acquire a firm after they're noticing an increase in misconduct over a period of time?
So that's actually one thing I showed, like the two sides of the story is that they take over the firm that's clean to begin with. So even after a sizable increase in the misconduct rate, they are actually still like on average at the like benchmark industry average level. So in that sense, they are not really completely messing up, so that make these firms unsellable. So I think that's one thing. I guess they are trying to, as I said, they are very good at testing the limit. They are probably, I don't think the baseline of zero misconduct is something we should be realistically hoping, right? So they are probably strike the balance between their profit and still acceptable to some degree, that meaning that the firm are still sellable. Yeah. Actually, I think Hannah, she's working on a dissertation also in this space, and she has some preliminary finding we would like to share with you guys as well.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Wu. So, yeah, so it's a great pleasure here. So this is a very early stage project, and it's also around the same topic, and we are using the same data set. So, and you can, maybe you can tell from the title, this is a very legal related project, and I know a lot of you know better about this than me, so any suggestion or idea are really welcome. So my project, this is about disappearing brokers, why are brokers taking on the fiduciary duty, and what it means for the investors. So you may feel confused by reading from the title, maybe I should change one later, but it I hope this slides can give you more background information about what I'm doing here. So if there is only one message I want you to take away from my topic, this is it. So we say about financial advisors, but there are actually two types of financial advisors. So in the previous paper, at current stage, we are more focused on what we call the registered investment advisors. So they are advice-oriented, or we say it's the financial doctor. So they are following the fiduciary standard. And they are providing the comprehensive financial planning or investment suggestions. And most of the time they charge flat fees. They are charged based on how much money you let him or her help you to manage. But there are another type of financial advisor, which we call the brokers. So they are the sales-oriented, or their job is to pitch the product. And there are a lot of controversial event here. So they are following higher and higher standard, but right now they are following which we call the regulatory best interest. So before this, the new regulatory is launched in 2019. So before 2019, there are very clear line between the registered investment advisor and brokers. But after this best interest, the line is very blurred. But still, we can say that these brokers, they are following lower standard compared with the financial advisors. And most of the time, they receive commission or transaction-based fees. And because of this, how they get the compensation, for example, if you go to a broker and you say, I want to buy some a financial product or mutual fund, so whether they recommend you the one that suits you most or the one they get the highest commission, so there is naturally high conflict of interest here. So also that's why there are a lot of policy changes here. So So as I said before, so you at least you need to know whether the financial advisor help you. Is he or she a financial registered investment advisor or broker check? So you need to know what hat they are wearing. So if the things are not complicated enough, so what I am looking at is I call the dual, or we call dual registered advisors. So they wearing two hats. They can be a registered investment advisor and at the same time they are brokers. And they can change the hat very flexibly, and they don't have to disclose to you what hat I'm wearing now. So this is what I'm trying to look at here. And so from this graph, you can see there is very big transition. So used to be broker is broker, and investment advisor, they are investment advisor like back in 19th. But this line is the people who are transition from brokers to the dual registered. And currently, I think like among all the brokers, half of them are also like an investment advisor. So this kind of situation actually make a lot of people very worrisome. Like here, I have a quote from SEC website. It says, if your investment profession offers both brokerage and advisory services, make sure you understand when they are acting as a broker or when they are acting as an advisor. Because there would be a lot of problem involved, like double dipping, like increase the conflict in interest. But also there are some people saying this is like a very natural transition because we used to need a broker to help us to like do the equity trading or something like that. But now we have Robinhood, we have so many trading platforms, so these people need to find jobs, so they like naturally transition to the investment advisor. So my research question, like just like my title tells, what is the motivation for these brokers? They are basically voluntarily taking on the fiduciary duties, and are these dual registered financial advisors committing more or less misconduct? And if we think about this, as I said before, so from the positive side, all the brokers who have very high conflict interest, now they are taking on the fiduciary, so they are having more litigation risk. And from this side, maybe these people, they are like have more legal constraint and they are acting better than before. But from the other side, as I said before, these dual registered people, they have the double dipping problem, so they can collect the commission as well as the advisor, like the asset-based advisor payment. So there are increased conflict in interest. So that's why I'm interested here. And I want to show you some very preliminary result. I don't even know how to interpret this. But from this graph, you can see very clear that compared with the pure broker or the pure investment advisor, these dual registered advisors, they commit the highest, much higher misconduct from year to year. So this is very robust result. Like basically, so I can say like these dual registered financial advisors, they are strongly associated with higher misconduct rate. And from the regression, different specification all tells us this story. So we could have like basically interpreted these dual registered financial advisors, they have higher misconduct rate. And so, as I said before, this is a project still in very preliminary stage, so I don't know how to tell the whole story or like how to interpret this result. But at least for this set of audience, like what we can tell from this. Like first, like message is that understand what your financial advisor is playing right now. Is he or she a broker or a financial advisor? And also, like as I said, there are so much information on SEC website. So to avoid the double dipping problem is to read the relationship summary of the firms your financial advisor works for. So sometimes the subsidiary or something, they have like he is a financial advisor, but like the subsidiary provide a financial product, then basically this firm, they are doing the double dipping. So, and also like read your financial advisor's report on the IPD or broker check. And for the policy implications, so it's like the line between the broker and the investment advisors are already very blurred. So we need to better clarify what standard these dual registered people are following. And also maybe, I think from 2016 to 2019, they are thinking about having a universal fiduciary duty for both the brokers and the financial advisors. But like, because I don't know why they just canceled that. Now it's like the regulatory best interest. But still, from like a personal idea, personal thinking, like consider like the universal fiduciary duty for both.
And we're just a little bit over time, but if you both wouldn't mind sharing, what are some of the key takeaways that we should take from your research and your discussion today?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I think investors need to be alert by themselves. And in fact, if you think you can just rely on financial advisors, most likely you're not going to get the best advice. You need to be financially knowledgeable enough to really be able to utilize advice. And therefore, I think investors should really be paying attention to the record and also special attention during the transition period. So that's what I say.
Well, thank you both. Yes.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I've worked on this project like for 3 or 4 years. I still don't know what the line is. So I think we need to clarify what is the regulatory best interest, like what is the difference from the fiduciary duty. I think from the policymaker's perspective, maybe like give us better idea. Okay.
Well, thank you both. I learned so much. I hope